this very wonderful and worthy organization. We have a very lovely program for you tonight, starring 4 journalists who are this year's Nieman Fellows at Harvard. And I'm sure you're going to leave here with some new insights and some knowledge that you'll consider your time very well spent indeed. Before we begin the program, it is my pleasure to introduce to you our new Executive Director, Anna Haig. Anna hails from the great state of Alaska. She's a graduate of the University of Pennsylvania, has worked as a reporter for the Keene Sentinel, and she was communications director for the Hook Fishermen's Association on Cape Cod. She's widely traveled, and she's spent time in London as a student and as an English teacher in Nepal. The duties of Executive Director of the World Affairs Council are really very varied and very numerous. It's not an easy job. You're expected to be chief fundraiser, a great communicator, a motivator for large numbers of our volunteers, an inspired program director, a diligent office manager, and in addition to that, any other duty or job that comes along. We're confident that Anna has the intelligence, the skills, and the ability to accomplish all these tasks with competence and aplomb. Please welcome with me, Anna Haig.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to be brief because I know we're all looking forward to the program. I'm so honored and excited to be here and to be joining an organization that has for more than 50 years fostered learning, discussion, and citizen involvement in world affairs. And that mission has never been more critical or more challenging than it is today. International news bureaus are being eliminated, school budgets are being cut, and at the same time, 2/3 of young adults in America can't find Iraq on a map, or 3/4 think that English is the most widely spoken language in the world. Now more than ever, it's crucial that citizens of New Hampshire strive to understand the world around them. The World Affairs Council of New Hampshire leads the state in bringing the world to your doorstep, whether it's the chance to watch and discuss acclaimed documentaries at the theater in Concord, eat dinner with international visitors, or meet foreign journalists like our guest this evening. We will continue to strive to take you beyond the headlines and educate local students about global affairs as well. I definitely look forward to strengthening and expanding our unique programming and increasing the Council's visibility, membership, and support in order to establish a strong foundation for the Council's next decade of service and beyond. With your continued support, we can bridge cultural divides and build global awareness. I really appreciate the warm welcome, and I'm very much looking forward to meeting with you all and working with you in the coming weeks and months. Thank you.
I'm scanning the audience to see if my wife is here because I forgot my reading glasses, so I borrowed Bob Siegelman's. And these are prescriptions, so I have no idea what I'm about to see. But anyway, thank you for coming. I'm Paul LeBlanc. I'm the president of the university, and I'll be squinting my way through an introduction here. But before I do that, oh, this is interesting. Before I do that, there were times in college when my vision was like this, but it was a whole other situation. It wasn't great, and I didn't wear glasses. I want to thank all of our sponsors and supporters who make this possible, to make the Spring Forum possible, and they include the Harbor Group, Wigan and Norrie, Holiday Inn, and our Spring Forum patrons, Ann Milne, the Puritan Back Room, St. Mary's Bank, and Andrew Suppley, and also the university was a sponsor of this event. So it's always a delight to have World Affairs Council events on this campus. I'm just so pleased that we that you found a home here. And it's great to have Anna and welcome her into our university community and to the local community of Manchester and southern New Hampshire. And it's great to have you back on campus. So I'm going to take a minute now to introduce our panelists, and I'd invite them to join me on stage as I do so. Enter stage right. You have profiles in your program as well that will go into more detail, and you'll get more detail through the program as you hear them talk about their work and actually share some of their work on these screens to your left and to your right. Together, they represent an amazing array of experiences that touch almost every corner of the globe. They have slept in unmentionable places in some cases, and they may want to talk about that. It turns out if you try to get bios online, you'll find out that there are indeed great limitations to the internet. Because what I could find is that Jim Reynolds apparently stars in Days of Our Lives, played in the NFL, was in the Dukes of Hazzard.
How did you know?
Well, the things you find on the internet, and of course it must be true. But after doing all of those things, he also found time to work for the BBC, first in South America and Chile, in the Middle East from 01 to 06, based in Jerusalem, and then spent time in China as well from 06 to 09. If you go to the BBC blogs, you'll find a great read, and I urge you to do so, especially his reflections on his last days in China before he left. Immediately to my left is Maria Belinska, who has also worked for the BBC as editor of World Current Affairs Radio, has produced a number of programming strands for the BBC, is working, Maria, I think you're going to get a little bit of a show of something you're working on now with an all-American crew, Perspectives on America.
Well, I can talk about that.
Unfortunately,
I don't have anything from that, but I certainly can talk about that.
Has done a lot of work outside of the BBC, including work for The Guardian, the Christian Science Monitor, newspapers we love very much, and also the Wall Street Journal. Sorry, that was a little, sorry. And then,
But I'm bummed.
sorry, that was terrible. And along the way has also authored a book about the history of the bagel, which is far, far more than history of the bagel. I urge you to take a look. I actually read excerpts this afternoon in my research, and you'll find that it's also a fascinating history of the world of Jewish culture and peoples within Poland and the relationship over history. And the bagel was not invented to commemorate the birth of Prince
King Jan Sobieski.
Thank you. But it's a great book, and I urge you. And Audra Ang is here, and I mentioned China. Jim spent time there. Audra is the Beijing-based correspondent for the Associated Press. She has covered not only the amazing changes that are underway in China, but the array of calamities and other sorts of, well, calamities, man-made and naturally induced and otherwise, but also the fascinating changes, both positive and negative. She's also reported from other parts of the region, including North Korea, Mongolia, and Afghanistan. And we're just delighted to have the three of you here and in the hands of our very, very capable moderator, Lisa Mullins. I have a dear friend, I have to tell you, who is a huge Seinfeld fan and a Curb Your Enthusiasm fan. And he was in a restaurant recently in Boston, and there was Julia Marie-Dreyfus. He's dreamed about meeting Julia Marie-Dreyfus, and the only thing he could blurt out was, "I love Larry David." And she looked at him like, so I met Lisa and said, "I love your program." And Mark Gorman, who's holding the fort, is okay, but he's no Lisa Mullins. As you know, she's become the anchor of PRI's The World and has been so since 1998. 20 years of reporting experience has literally taken her around the world, from China, Albania, Italy, Mexico, Northern Ireland, and she has sat across from world leaders, including Secretary of State Colin Powell, Secretary General, UN Secretary General Kofi Annan, and Hamid Karzai, and left the last one with her wallet intact, so she's a professional and capable as well. Lisa, thank you so much for, thank you all for joining us. We're delighted to have you.
Thank you.
I want to thank President LeBlanc and also Catherine and Anna and Tim, who spent way too many hours trying to track us down, wrestle down more online information about us, and he's a man of great patience. And I want to thank you all for coming as well to hear us talk about what goes on behind the news and making news, and we are very interested in hearing your own questions in just a bit. But first, I have the pleasure of being the anchor of the world, a title that my mother especially enjoys. It is, I have to say, one of the greatest jobs I could possibly have. We're all on sabbatical right now, but in my daily work, I anchor a daily news show. It airs, in fact, on NHPR, 3 o'clock weekdays, Monday through Friday. It's an hour-long show that focuses on international news for an American audience. And one of the best things about it is that I get to ask questions and not answer them, and I intend to continue that tonight. I will answer, but it's fun right now to be able to ask my colleagues from the Neiman Foundation, starting with James Reynolds, just to tell us what you do.
Unfortunately, I don't play in the NFL, nor do I star on a daytime TV show. I'm just a reporter. I'm a TV and radio reporter for the BBC, as the President explained. I'm the one who has to get up every day and then write the script and appear on TV and tell you what's happening and hope that I get it right.
And Audra, huh?
I write stories. I don't even get to do the fun TV stuff, but I just do the little notebook and pen. Although with the push for multimedia, I've started taking more photos and learning how to do videos. So someday I'll be more accomplished, or as accomplished as my colleagues. So.
And Maria?
So I'm going to use a food analogy because I know some of you in the audience are interested in food. And we've sort of been referring to spinach in a way because I love this NPR expression that you have to have the spinach with the treats. So I like to think of what I do with a team of producers and journalists as turning spinach into spanakopita and ravioli with white cheese. Because we do the sort of the programming that complements the daily news that James and Audra and Lisa present. And so mostly documentaries, but also debates and radio talks. Alistair Cook was in my department when he was alive, and we produce programming for all the radio networks of the BBC, but increasingly, as Audra says, we also do a bit of video, and we do online audio slideshows, so we have become masters, we hope, of all trades, or at least we're trying to be.
That is probably a good time to, I want to talk a little bit later about multimedia and how it's affecting all our jobs. But maybe starting with you, Maria, could you just give us a little bit more of a spectrum of the kinds of things we do, you do in particular, in making spinach spanakopita?
Okay. So, well, in terms, this we're not, you want me to get up now or like?
Actually, I'm thinking of the variety of stories, sort of going.
The variety of stories, okay. So the variety of stories, the BBC has 5 terrestrial radio networks. And so we could do anything from why Atlanta has become, or this is an old, somewhat old story, the capital of hip hop. So that's for a youth station in the UK. To, for the more highbrow classical music and ideas station Radio 3, we've done a documentary comparing life in the 21st century European Union with life in medieval Europe. And then for Radio 4, which is the closest equivalent to public radio stations here, we do a series called Crossing Continents, which is the only weekly world affairs documentary strand in the UK, and I'll be playing some from that later. And for the World Service, which a lot of you will hear on your public radio stations here, we do lots of different documentary series, but just one example is a history of the NGOs. So that sort of gives you an idea of some of the range of what we do.
Audra, how about the spectrum on your end of what you've covered?
Well, I always say that I do the 3 Ds: disasters, disease, dissidents. I don't do happy. Like that was my time in China. Yeah, I mean that's that covers a pretty broad spectrum. There's a lot of human rights issues. I got there, SARS hit pretty fast, bird flu, Streptococcus suis, which is like a pig-borne disease. And we had tremendous stories in 2008. There were the Tibet riots, the earthquake, the Olympics. I got really lucky. I got there in 2002, and pretty much everything happened after that. No fault of mine. But And so, yeah, and you know, China, as you guys know, is this fascinating story, a never-ending story, ever-changing story. And so it's hard to kind of give, that's why I do the 3Ds. I'll stop there.
I'll do anything my boss tells me to do, any day. So often, like Audra, it's covering disasters like earthquakes, floods, plane crashes. Sometimes it's trying to do broader feature stories like music. I'm a wannabe sports commentator in my spare time, but the BBC never took me on as a sports commentator. But anytime I can get to try and do that and try and persuade the BBC to run my commentaries, I try. They very rarely get on air.
And in terms of the world, we understand that for many Americans, the way into international news, a kind of news and information passport is food. So we like to do a lot of stories about food, about sports, and about music. Mark O'Werman, my colleague, does something called the Global Hit. It's been one of the fixtures from the very beginning of the program, and we're about the only ones who are doing this now. And I've actually learned about a lot of musicians, from Virginia Rodriguez to Raul Malo, through our program, through the end of the show. So I'm listening as intently as I hope you are to what's coming out on the other end. And you know, they say also that the greatest geography lesson is war. Well, I will challenge that, because the geography quiz that we have every day, if you haven't tried it, try it. It's not easy, but that in another way is a way to bring people in to things international, things beyond our borders. We have a bit of a show and tell. Each of our guests has graciously brought in a little bit of the work that represents what they've been doing, and also helps show what goes into telling difficult stories. Because one of the things we know is that, especially for an American audience, there is a great interest in things international, but not always a reference point. For those Americans who have traveled, absolutely now there's a reference point. But for many people who haven't, how do you get someone interested in Estonia? How do you get someone interested in the Middle East when you're trying again to tell the story that they've heard time and time again? So Audra and Maria and James have been kind enough to bring in little samples of their work. And why don't we start with you, James?
So I was in the Middle East for 5 years, and as Lisa said, the hardest thing is to try to make it different every day, to try and engage with the audience, which sees the same thing day in, day out. And so we sort of spend a lot of the time in the Bureau scratching our heads thinking, how can we get you engaged with our story? In 2006, one of the main stories was Israel's decision to draw up its own borders. So we thought, how can we do this on TV? This is what we came up with.
Israel's election campaign is all about the lines on this map. The next Israeli government may try to draw up a definitive border between Israelis and Palestinians on Israel's terms. So, as an exercise, we will give Israeli voters the chance to define their own borders.
I would keep the Golan.
So you keep the Golan Heights?
Yes, for sure. It's a very important area for Israel.
And what are you doing here?
I'm going to keep the West Bank.
You're going to keep the West Bank?
Yeah, I believe in my faith. I believe, according to the Bible of the Jews, the Tanakh, the Israel land is ours.
Right, and so what about a Palestinian state?
It's not their state.
Away from the front lines of the conflict, on the beach in Tel Aviv, many voters take the red pen in a different direction.
So we'll start from Tel Aviv here to the territories, and including Ariel.
Right, so you're taking the Ariel settlement block?
Yes.
But we leave the rest of the West Bank outside.
And then you're
exactly, the rest of the West Bank will take Ma'ale
So you take the
Adumim.
settlement block near Jerusalem.
Yeah.
Gush Etzion.
And Gush
Gush Etzion,
Etzion.
another one.
Exactly.
And then down to the Dead Sea.
Yes.
Gaza, I think...
You don't want Gaza?
No, we don't want it.
There are people living there. I hope they'll have a good life.
So this is a two-state solution, a Palestinian state and an Israeli state.
Yes.
But for others, the borders are much more simple.
Right, that doesn't leave any room for a Palestinian state.
I don't want the Palestinian state.
There we go. I still have that map at home. And then when I was in China, we often had a problem with trying to get stories. Often we'd get the hand in the camera from officials, but on the 20th anniversary of the Tiananmen Square protests, the authorities thought, look, we're a bit fed up of putting our hands in front of journalist cameras. We still don't want them to get the story. So as you'll see, they came up with a rather novel way of trying to stop us from doing our reporting. You'll see exactly what I mean in a second.
Right, we're just across the road from Tiananmen Square. It is now June the 4th, and we're going to see if we can get in. We've been told it's reasonably difficult for foreign journalists to get into Tiananmen Square at the moment, but I have all the requisite documents. I've got my British passport here, and I've got my press card issued by the Chinese authorities. As you can see, the square's over there, and at the moment it's open to tourists. Ni hao.
Show me your passport.
Here's my passport. We're being stopped across the road from Tiananmen Square at the moment. By that white tent where the police van is, there's a metal detector, and we're told that the police are checking everyone's passports very, very carefully. My colleague came earlier today, and he was told that we don't need permission.
That's video moment. That's video moment.
Okay, wait a moment. Now what's happening here? You're not able to see me at the moment because there are two gentlemen with umbrellas. Each of them have earpieces, and they're being told, I think they must have been ordered to just keep an eye on the foreign press, sometimes get in the middle of the shot, because that tends to happen quite a lot at the moment. We've heard that happening to other foreign journalists as well. It certainly protects them from the sun. In Beijing at the moment, there's no sign of any official commemoration of the June the 4th anniversary. It's very difficult to speak at the moment. So I'll just come around here. So in Beijing at the moment, there is no official commemoration of June the 4th at all. There's no memorial allowed, no vigils are allowed either. Anyone who might want to remember June the 4th is probably being watched by the police.
Did you see the agent at the end? He was smiling. So I think they might have had as much fun with it as I did. But anyway, those are two of the reports that I wanted to show you. Happy to chat afterwards.
So James left us off in China, and that's where Audra Ang is going to pick up, because she spent an awful lot of time there as well.
Probably too long. Well, what I'm going to do now is kind of the equivalent of boring everyone with holiday slideshow things. Basically, what happened was I started out as a print reporter, and then I started taking photos as a way to help me remember details when I wrote later. But then I discovered it was actually really fun. So what I'm going to do is give you a slideshow of my time in China. Some of it, it's going to last probably 5, 6, 7 minutes. I'm going to talk you through each photo. If it gets boring, put up your hand, tell me to shut up and stop. And it's going to cover China, some North Korea, a little bit of Kabul. And so let me start.
Audra, do you mind if we move over to the side so we can watch?
Of course. No, please, go ahead. So these are petitioners in China. We get a lot of letters and calls from them. These are people who have no recourse, and so they petition in hopes that we could, help them out with their problems. This is just a weird slice of life. It was art imitating life, life imitating art. Same thing. It's just a back shot. It's just, slice of life in China in case you guys haven't been there. And this is, again, in rural Beijing. Beijing is a huge city of about 18 million, and this is in the outskirts. This is what life in the rural areas looks like. This is another woman. This is her son who was executed. I followed her for a few days. She and her daughter were trying to figure out when he got executed. She never knew that her son died. And not only that, there was a whole organ scandal. His organs apparently were taken. And she never found out, what happened to them, or him, actually. She never got back his body either. This was taken in front of the court. As soon as we took that picture, police started following us and trying to figure out what was going on. I love taking pictures of people's faces. This is in Fujian province, which is where my ancestors are from. Beautiful faces of people. they play chess a lot around Beijing, and this is something, you know, you'll see a lot of elderly people sit around playing chess in the afternoons. Kabul, Arnold Schwarzenegger, it's an ad for a gym, actually. That's pretty big, and lots of kids go there. I was just struck by how, you know, so many buildings in Kabul are still bullet-ridden and destroyed. Yeah, burqa. I was obsessed with taking pictures of women in burqas. I'd heard that they weren't wearing them anymore, but they were everywhere still. Just, you know, again, streets of Kabul. It's fascinating being there. It's just beautiful. Bored yet? Sorry. Another beautiful face, you know, gorgeous, like lines and character. And this woman later patted my cheek and said Tash Shakur, which is thank you for taking my picture. North Korea, flag in the back, made up of kids holding, and they practice for years, you know, from when they're little, you know, to be part of this celebration. Field in North Korea, the rest of it was barren. This is what they showed us, just to show that, you know, they were fine. This sliver of green. Beautiful soldier women. These police women are really famous too. They just stand there all day directing traffic, and it was hard to get a picture of them. This is Beijing during the Olympics. This is the Bird's Nest Stadium. And again, you know, this is the opening ceremony, huge amount of national pride. It was actually really interesting, exciting to be there. And like North Korea, you see it's like mass, you know, 1.3 billion people, that's the population, and you see the kind of stunning things they can do with that number of people. It's really an amazing sight. Again, just the globe, I don't know. I'm sure, did you guys see this on TV? Yeah, some of it. I got so lucky to be there in the stadium. And then I got sent to Phuket. I was on holiday in Phuket, and what happens? A plane crashes. And the airport is shut down, so I have to get off my holiday and go cover the story. These are dental records. They're trying to identify bodies. And this was the first time I got my real camera. And I had to like shoot. I didn't know how to shoot with the SLR, and this was my first time learning, I guess. I had to learn on the job. The next few photos have, it's a bit, you know, this is the Sichuan earthquake, and there are some corpses in there, so prepare yourself. 90,000 people died. It happened May 12th, 2 years ago, 2008. It was probably the most significant story I've done. The damage was devastating. One day I was walking, you know, in rubble 7 stories high, and it was hot, and the decomposing bodies, you know, I was getting whiffs of that, and that's when I realized that there were people under my feet who were trapped and would never get out, and that's when it really, really hit home. It really shook me up. I spent about a month and a half total in the quake zone, covering, you know, the anniversaries, 1 week, 1 month. Shoes, yeah. I mean, it was really probably the most significant story I've done in my career. Yeah, this is one of the days. They were starting to. God, I can't speak English. They were starting to disinfect the entire town because you know, they were decomposing, but they're trying to prevent disease from happening. So they had armies of people. It looked like something out of a sci-fi movie. And that character in the back, it's Chai. It means to raise something, and you see that all over China. This is one of the kids who was injured in the schools. Again, another school where so many children died, and you know, parents were out there mourning with pictures, photos of their children. It was terribly sad. This is the scene that made me break down. I was calling it in to my editor, and I just suddenly started crying because, you know, it really hits home. You know, 1 second you're alive, the next second you're dead. And I don't know, I'm sorry, I'm getting a little emotional, and the kind of destruction you see. And these are survivors, and you know, people are trying to rally them, get their spirits up. They're in line waiting for food, and volunteers were cooking up big batches of food for them. The water you see in the background, it's a village. You know, the quake lakes kind of broke, and these people, that was their homes are about, you know, 200 feet underwater. This is in Tibet, in the Jokang Temple. The monk wanted money for me to take that picture. And this is when the Qinghai Railway was being built. Again, it was just stunning. In Tibet, you know, there's so little development that the skies are blue in a way, you know, they can hardly ever be in Beijing. And the altitude, it was crazy. I got really bad headaches. These are, you know, Tibetan nomad kids. They're just cute. And this is in front of another temple. You know, you see people prostrating. It's part of Tibetan Buddhism. This is during Chinese New Year and Lunar New Year, and it's like Baghdad there. You know, like you get fireworks going off for like first day and the 15th day. This is just a funny picture in Xinjiang. That cell phone numbers there, advertisements. Great Wall of China, of course, you guys know that. Sorry, we're almost done if this is like a little too much. This is just weird stuff you see in Beijing. As soon as I took a picture, they pushed the mannequins down, and my friend said the caption should be, "It's always something." Again, interesting faces. These are Hui, so they're Chinese Muslims. They were, that you know that from the white caps. Terracotta warriors. And these are little boys in Xinjiang, which is a western region, another Muslim region.